Alright, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. I've been going over a series of video presentations I'm creating for the Rankin Technical College AWD, or Application and Website Development Program, and in particular the AWD 1111 .NET Framework with Web Databases class for the fall 2019 semester. For that class, we will be using the textbook you can see on your screen, ProASP.NET 5, ProASP.NET MVC 5, and a press text from Adam Freeman. I am now in Chapter 19 of 27, Controller Extensibility. In this chapter, the author says, "You will show you some of the advanced MVC features for working with controllers." He starts the chapter by explaining the parts of the request handling process that lead to the execution of an action method and demonstrating different ways to control it. The basic flow is shown here in Figure 19.1. The focus on the first part of the chapter is what's called the controller factory and the action invoker. Alright, the controller factory, as mentioned there, is responsible for creating instances of controllers to service a request. The action invoker, on the other hand, is responsible for finding and invoking the action method in the controller class. The MVC framework includes default behavior for both the controller factory and the action invoker. Alright. The author will also end the chapter by showing you how to replace these components entirely with custom ones. So, for here, I am going to close the project I worked on, or close the solution that I worked on in the last chapter, and I'm going to create a new project. It will be an ASP.NET Web App project. Next, we are to call this Controller Extensibility, whatever, using the empty that is not at all what I want. We're going to call this Chapter 19 for the solution name. Click Create. I want an empty project with the MVC folders in it, I believe. Don't need that. And we'll bring that over. There we go. All right. To set it up, I created a result.cs file to define the result class shown here. So, go to the models folder. We haven't been there for a while. Add a class. That'll be result.cs. There, whoops. And there it is. Next, we want to go in and create an associated view. So let's go to our views folder and let's add a shared folder in here. And in that shared folder, we're going to want to come in, right mouse click, add new item. Let's go to MVC. Choose MVC view page with razor, and we will call this one result as well. Alright, we will replace the code that's in there with the code that is shown on pages 530 and 531. Alright, the author mentioned this view uses the result class that we defined in listing 19.2 as its model and displays the value of the controller name and the action name. Finally, I need to add some basic controllers. So, the product controller is shown here on the rest of page 531. Most of it is shown there. So let's get over to controllers, right mouse click, add controller, empty, add product, paste that in. We are not done yet, I don't believe. Yes, we are. Then on the next page, we're going to have a customer controller. This is not complete. Oops. These controllers, as mentioned down below here, do not perform any other useful actions other than to report that they have been called via the result.cs HTML view. Well, that wasn't good. All right. I want Visual Studio to start with the root URL, so we're going to do our old trick of project, properties, web, specific page, close that. All right, that gets us, oh, close that I said, but that gets us to the middle of page 532, creating a custom controller factory. As with much of the MVC framework, the best way to understand this is to create a custom implementation. I do not recommend that you do this in a real-world project, as there are easier ways to create custom behavior. But this is a nice way to demonstrate how the MVC framework creates instances of controllers. Controller factories are defined by the iController factory interface, which is shown right here. In the sections that follow, we will create a simple controller factory and walk through implementations for each of the methods in the iController factory interface. To begin, we're going to create an infrastructure folder under the name of our project. And we are going to add a class in there called Custom Controller Factory.cs. This will be used to create the custom controller factory shown in the listing that's on page 533. Takes up most of that page. Now the author mentions at the bottom of page 533 that the most important method in the interface is create controller. Right here. The MVC framework will call this when it needs a controller to service a request. The parameters to this method are a request context, like you can see right here. And a string which contains the controller value from the routed URL. The request context defines the properties that are described in the table that's on the top of page 534 in the text. Those being HTTP context and route data. All right. The author says here, one reason I do not recommend creating a custom controller in this way is that finding controller classes in the web application and instantiating them is complicated. You need to be able to locate controllers dynamically and consistently and deal with all sorts of potential problems, such as disambiguating between classes with the same name in different namespaces, constructor exceptions, etc. There are only 2 controllers in the example project, and we're going to instantiate them directly, which means hardwiring the class names into the controller factory, something which probably wouldn't be a good idea in a real project. The purpose of the create controller method is to create instances of controller classes that can handle the current request. There are no restrictions on how we do this. The only rule is that you must return an object that implements the iController interface as the method result. All right. Dealing with the fallback controller. Let's check our time. All right. I guess this is as good a place to stop as any, because we're at 12.5 minutes. So I will pick it up right there in just a few.